When 74-year-old Clara Thompson stepped into the grand lobby of one of the most renowned hotels in Chicago, she wasn't dressed to stand out. Clad in a simple coat and carrying a worn leather handbag, she looked like any other elderly woman. But beneath her calm and unassuming appearance, she was the architect of the very place she was walking into. As she slowly made her way across the polished floors, the sound of her shoes echoed faintly, unnoticed by the staff, who were trained to cater to the rich and powerful. What they didn't know was that Clara, with her kind eyes and humble demeanor, was the mastermind behind the hotel's existence. She had built it from the ground up, overcoming countless obstacles to bring her vision to life. What happened next shocked everyone. The staff's dismissive behavior would soon lead to a revelation that no one could have predicted. The crisp autumn air clung to Clara as she stepped out of the taxi and looked up at the towering Grandview Hotel. The building gleamed in the afternoon sun, casting long shadows on the busy streets of Chicago. The city buzzed with energy, honking taxis, shouting street vendors, and the hum of distant conversations filled the air. Clara stood there for a moment, taking it all in. She was looking at the crown jewel of her empire, the Grandview Hotel, a place she had dreamed of building for years. The Grandview wasn't just another hotel in her portfolio, it was the embodiment of her years of hard work and determination. Located on a prime corner of Michigan Avenue, it catered to the elite, hosting celebrities, politicians, and business tycoons. Every corner of the hotel, from its sleek glass facade to its luxurious interiors, reflected Clara's vision, a blend of elegance, comfort, and inclusivity. The name Grandview itself was a testament to the heights she had reached and the barriers she had broken. But today, Clara wasn't here as the celebrated CEO of the Grandview Hotel Group. She was here as a simple guest, blending into the background of the very place she had created. She believed that true leadership meant knowing the reality of your business from every angle. So she had come to see how the hotel was operating without anyone knowing her true identity. She walked into the lobby, her worn leather handbag clutched tightly in her hand. The grandeur of the space struck her immediately. A massive chandelier hung from the ceiling, sparkling with thousands of crystals. Guests lounged on plush velvet chairs, sipping cocktails and laughing, while the staff moved with a sense of purpose, attending to each need with precision. As Clara approached the front desk, she noticed the young man behind it, his name tag reading Jack. He looked up, his gaze barely lingering on her as he greeted her with a practiced smile. "How can I help you, ma'am?" he asked in a tone that, while polite, seemed laced with judgment. Clara smiled warmly and replied, "I'd like to book a room, please." Her calm voice didn't betray the resolve within her. Jack's smile widened, but there was a hint of amusement in his eyes. "This is a luxury hotel," he said, almost as if to remind her. "Rooms here start at $1,000 a night. Perhaps you prefer somewhere a little more affordable?" Clara's lips tightened, but she held her ground. She had faced far worse judgment in her life and had learned the power of composure. "I am aware of the prices," she said evenly. "Please check for availability." Jack hesitated for a moment, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Clara could almost feel the judgment in the air as the young man finally let out a sigh and began typing. The wait felt endless. In the background, she could hear muffled whispers from the other staff, laughing softly as they exchanged looks. Words like "wrong place" and "can't afford it" floated in the air. After what felt like an eternity, Jack looked up from the screen. "We do have a room available," he said, but the tone of his voice suggested it was more of a pity than a service. "It's one of our entry-level suites. Nothing fancy." Clara nodded. "That will do." She pulled out her black credit card, the sight of which made Jack hesitate for a brief moment. The gleaming Centurion American Express card made him pause before he processed the payment without a word. As Clara walked away from the desk, her heart felt heavy, but she remained composed. She wasn't here to be treated like royalty, she was here to witness the truth. The suite was magnificent. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided a panoramic view of the city skyline. The room was elegantly furnished with a king-sized bed, plush carpet, and a marble bathroom stocked with the finest toiletries. Yet Clara barely noticed. Her mind kept replaying the encounter at the front desk. Sitting on the edge of the bed, Clara opened her laptop and logged into the hotel's internal systems. She had access to everything, from guest reviews to employee records. As her fingers flew over the keyboard, she scrolled through the data, looking for patterns. What she discovered troubled her. Complaints from minority guests often went unresolved, and the employee surveys revealed a culture of favoritism and subtle discrimination. One review stood out to her: "Beautiful hotel, but the staff made me feel like I didn't belong, won't be returning." It was signed by Mrs. Brown, a guest who had experienced an eerily similar situation to Clara's. Just then, her phone buzzed. It was Marcus, her assistant. "Miss Scott, do you need anything?" Clara paused for a moment before responding. "Yes, Marcus. I need you to prepare an emergency board meeting and send me the personnel files for the front desk and restaurant staff." That evening, Clara decided to dine at the hotel's renowned restaurant, the Regency Room, famous for its Michelin-starred chef and exquisite menu. She wore the same modest attire, unwilling to draw attention to herself. As she approached the host stand, she was greeted by a young man named Ryan, whose smile was as practiced as his suit. "Do you have a reservation, ma'am?" Ryan asked, his tone polite, but there was an air of indifference about him. "No, but I'm staying here," Clara replied. "I was hoping you could accommodate me." Ryan glanced down at his tablet, then up at Clara. After a brief pause, he spoke again. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We're fully booked tonight." Clara scanned the dining room. While several tables were occupied, there were still a few empty ones, the pristine white linens untouched. She could feel Ryan's eyes shift to a couple walking up behind her, a well-dressed man and woman. The man smiled and asked, "Can we get a table?" "Of course," Ryan said, his tone immediately changing. "Right this way, please." Clara stepped aside, watching as the couple was led to one of the best tables in the house, a prime spot by the window. She felt a familiar ache in her chest. Decades of breaking barriers hadn't erased the sting of prejudice. "Excuse me," Clara said, turning back to Ryan. "Are you sure there isn't a table available?" Ryan sighed, clearly frustrated. "Fine," he muttered, "but it's not one of our better tables." He led her to a small table near the kitchen doors, far from the ambiance of the main dining area. The clatter of dishes and the buzz of kitchen staff surrounded her as she sat down. Guests glanced her way, their expressions a mix of curiosity and pity. Clara felt the sting of their judgment, but she kept her composure. She ordered a simple meal, her appetite diminished by the circumstances. As she ate, her mind wandered. She thought of the countless other guests who had likely faced similar treatment and how painful it was to experience this in a place she had built. Clara's thoughts drifted back to her early days in Atlanta. She had been a young single mother, juggling multiple jobs just to make ends meet. Racism and sexism weren't just obstacles, they were everyday realities. Back then, she had promised herself that if she ever succeeded, she would create spaces where everyone, regardless of race or background, would feel valued and welcome. Now, standing in the place she had worked so hard to create, Clara was heartbroken to see that the staff didn't share her vision. What good was an empire if its foundation was cracked? She couldn't ignore it any longer. Tomorrow she would make things right. The next morning, Clara woke up early, her resolve stronger than ever. She spent the morning reviewing the personnel files Marcus had sent over. Ryan, the host, had been a recent hire, with glowing reviews from previous employers, but his file showed a lack of diversity or sensitivity training. Scott, the maitre d', had been with the hotel for a while and had a good reputation, but he had been the subject of several complaints, particularly for dismissive behavior toward guests who didn't meet his idea of high class. Clara felt a pang of disappointment. These weren't just employees. They were the face of her brand, and they had failed her. But rather than dwell on their shortcomings, she focused on the solutions ahead. Marcus called to inform her that the staff meeting was ready. Clara had requested that the entire team gather, from front desk workers to housekeeping staff. Word had spread quickly, and by the time she arrived, the air was thick with curiosity and nervous energy. As Clara entered the grand ballroom, her presence immediately commanded attention. She was dressed in an impeccably tailored navy suit, and the room went silent as all eyes turned toward her. She walked to the podium, standing tall with confidence. "Good morning," she began, her voice steady and clear. "For those of you who don't know me, I am Clara Monroe, the founder and CEO of the Monroe Hotel Group." The announcement sent shockwaves through the room. Gasps filled the air, and several employees exchanged nervous glances. Ryan and Scott, who had been standing at the back, stiffened as they realized the gravity of the situation. Clara continued, her gaze sweeping across the room. Yesterday, I visited this hotel as a guest. I wanted to experience what our customers experience. What I encountered was deeply troubling. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. Discrimination and disrespect have no place in my hotels. This isn't just a failure of customer service. It's a failure of the values this company was built on. Clara's voice grew more resolute. As of today, we are implementing new policies to ensure this never happens again. Mandatory diversity and sensitivity training will be required for all staff. We will also establish an anonymous reporting system where guests and employees can voice their concerns without fear of retaliation. A murmur of relief and unease spread through the room. Clara wasn't finished. Furthermore, there will be consequences for those who fail to uphold our standards. Effective immediately, several employees will be terminated. She glanced at Ryan and Scott, whose faces had gone pale. Her assistant, Marcus, stepped forward and handed her a clipboard with a list of names. Clara read the names aloud. Ryan, Scott, she paused. I do not take these decisions lightly, but as leaders, we must be accountable for our actions and inactions. The room was filled with stunned silence. Clara's gaze swept over the room one last time, and she left the podium. We will rebuild the trust that's been lost, she said firmly, and we will make sure that everyone, regardless of background, feels valued and respected here. After the meeting, Clara stayed to speak with the remaining staff. She reassured them that her goal wasn't to punish, but to create a better environment for everyone. Many employees, particularly those from minority backgrounds, approached her to share their experiences. Some thanked her for addressing issues they had long felt powerless to change. Clara spent the rest of the day working with the newly appointed leadership team. The new general manager, Carla, a longtime employee known for her fairness and commitment to inclusivity, was tasked with overseeing the implementation of the changes. Together, they outlined a plan to rebuild trust with both staff and guests. That evening, Clara decided to dine at the hotel's acclaimed restaurant again. This time, she was seated at the best table in the house. The staff, now fully aware of her identity, treated her with the utmost respect. However, Clara made it clear to Carla that this deference shouldn't just be for her, but for every guest. True change, Clara said to Carla, isn't about how they treat me, it's about how they treat everyone. The next day, Clara left the hotel, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The experience had been painful, but necessary. It reminded her of why she had built her empire in the first place, to create spaces where everyone, regardless of race or background, could feel valued. Word of Clara's visit spread quickly. News outlets picked up the story, lauding her commitment to justice and equality. Guests who had previously felt marginalized returned, praising the changes they saw. For Clara, this was more than just a business victory. It was a personal triumph. She had faced prejudice, fought back with grace, and emerged stronger. In doing so, she had ensured that the Monroe Regency remained not just a hotel, but a beacon of progress. Clara's actions didn't just stop with the staff meeting. Over the next few weeks, she personally oversaw the implementation of the new policies. She made sure that every employee, from the housekeeping staff to the front desk attendants, underwent comprehensive diversity and sensitivity training. The goal was clear: to foster an environment where everyone, no matter their background, could feel respected and valued. With the new training in place, the atmosphere at the Monroe Regency began to shift. Employees started to show more warmth and understanding toward guests from all walks of life. Complaints about discrimination decreased significantly, and the overall guest satisfaction scores began to rise. Clara knew that change takes time, but she was determined to see it through. A few months later, Clara received a letter from a former guest who had stayed at the hotel before the changes. The guest, a woman of color, had written about how she was treated during her visit and how it had made her feel like she didn't belong. The letter concluded with a message of gratitude for the changes Clara had put in place. It was a small but meaningful gesture that confirmed her efforts were making a difference. Clara continued to visit the hotel regularly, always making sure to observe the interactions between guests and staff. She wanted to be certain that the values she had instilled in the company were still alive and well. The staff now greeted her with respect, but Clara knew that her success would not be measured by how they treated her, but by how they treated every guest that walked through the doors. Over time, the Monroe Regency became a symbol of inclusivity and progress, attracting guests from all walks of life. It wasn't just known for its luxury, but for its commitment to making everyone feel welcome. Clara's legacy was no longer just about building a successful business empire, but about creating a lasting impact on an industry that had long been resistant to change. The story of Clara's visit to her own hotel became widely known, and her commitment to justice and equality was celebrated across the nation. She had turned a painful experience into a catalyst for change, ensuring that her hotels would always remain places of respect, dignity, and inclusivity. Clara had faced prejudice, but with unwavering determination and grace, she had turned it into an opportunity to elevate the standards of her company and change the culture of the hospitality industry for the better. Her legacy lived on not just in the walls of the Monroe Regency, but in the hearts of every guest who felt truly valued.